Hi, my name's Lewis, and I welcome you to join me on a voyage into the depths of my airhead compost toilet.
My name's Lewis, and I work for a charity that plants community orchards, fruit trees all around London, and I have an airhead compost toilet. So it's made up of two chambers. One is like the solids chamber, the poo chamber. One's a front disconnectable bit, I call it the wheat chamber. You open the lid, like with a normal toilet, you pull down your trousers and stuff, and then you sit on it, like a normal toilet. The only difference is, this time, if you're going to wee, then you don't do anything else. You have to sit down though, so men ideally would sit down. The difference is, if you need to do a poo, then you have to just switch a little lever. There's a little lever on the side, and it's like a little kind of a trapdoor that opens into the poo chamber, and then you do what you do through that, and then you add just a handful of whatever carbon you want to add. I've generally been using pet bedding, but you can get coarse pet bedding from Wilko's. And then you don't put any toilet paper in there. Some people do, but actually generally it takes up, you've got limited space, so paper can add a lot of bulk, and so I kind of save space by putting that in a little bin, continental style. And it's really simple. It's basically just made out of recycled plastic, so it's quite long lasting, and it has a little handle in the poo chamber, which is quite useful. You turn it from the outside, then it kind of turns your poo, so it helps to aerate it, helps the oxygen to get in there for all the aerobic microbes. And the reason it's called an airhead is because it has a tube that attaches to the side, a hose, and there's a little 12-volt fan, which is basically a fan like a computer fan, and that basically draws out any smell, and it kind of draws out air and sort of moisture with that air. So basically it helps to start the composting process while it's sort of in situ, if you like, and that's quite useful because already when you come to emptying it, it's already less resembling poo. So generally it's just me on board who lives here full time, so it just depends on how many visitors you have, but at the moment it's around between 6 and 7 weeks that you need to take first, so you have to empty it. So I empty that with a kind of a scooper thing, and then I put that into a second plastic container where there's air holes drilled in the side. Add some more sawdust. I add wood ash as well because I don't burn coal. So I've just got pure wood ash, which is great because you can add lots of extra phosphorus there, which makes it an even better feed for the trees. And then, so that's the secondary kind of composting stage there, where ideally you turn it kind of with any normal compost, you kind of turn it to aerate it, and that speeds up the process. I often add quite a bit more of the carbon because I found that it's still too wet generally. Not that wet, but still at the bottom it's still a bit wet, so I'll turn it, maybe even just every week or even every couple of weeks. I was keeping that in the engine room, in the engine bay, in winter, so whenever the engine's running, the heat from the engine helps with that speeding up the process of the microbes, breaking it down. But more recently, since the weather's got nice, I've basically just got it on my roof, just with a bit of tarpaulin over the top, and then the heat from the roof will hopefully help that process speed up.
Okay, so here's an apple tree that I've planted, and basically this has been here for a year now, this tree. And so what I've done this spring is to come and use my human manure, the mature stuff that's ready to use, and used it as a mulch to top dress the tree. So there's a mulch mat down here, a biodegradable mulch mat that'll keep down all of its extra growth of all of these other plants, so that the tree has a chance for its own roots to establish unimpeded by the competition from the other plants. And then on top of that I've put a layer of my human manure which will act as an extra suppressant, but also importantly, as that starts to break down, all of those important nutrients are going to go into the surface of the soil where the feeder roots of the tree is, and then that tree is going to be able to use those to make nice new delicious apples. And this is a lemon pippin So it creates nice big yellow lemon-like apples.
But we like more frequently, because it's a 5 litre wee container, and ideally you don't want to let it fill up. There's been 2 instances where it's actually overflowed. Once when I was using it, once when my girlfriend was using it, and that's not very pleasant. Not the end of the world, but like if it's filled up, then generally you've let the wee stay there for maybe a few days. So there's a distinct kind of, I don't know, that kind of not very nice wee smell once it's no longer sterile and it's a bit kind of, you know, bacteria's in there and it smelt a little bit. So you don't really want to be doing that. Ideally you'd empty it every couple of days, because also that means you've got a smaller quantity to deal with, which means you don't have to worry so much about where you pour it. I generally pour it around the root area of long-lived perennial plants like shrubs and trees, because they like their nitrogen in the form that it comes in wee. So actually, like anything, if you've got a larger amount of it, you have to think more about not oversaturating, because that becomes a form of pollution in itself. So the smaller amount you can just kind of, it's easier to deal with. If you've got a large amount, I tend to sort of like walk quite a long way, walk along just with a little trickle of it going out, so it gets spread out along lots of different trees. And if I'm somewhere for 2 weeks, I share it around. I don't kind of keep going back to the same spot. So the great thing is, once you set it up, once you have it, the costs involved are probably 1 bag of pet bedding from Wilko's, which costs 49p every month and a half, maybe, if that, and that's it. No more costs, no more nothing really. Just the occasional half an hour or so it takes to kind of actually empty it out. But the upfront cost is fairly significant. I was lucky in that I was one of a big group of London boaters who all chipped in for a bulk order from who was at the time the main supplier, like for the UK, because they're an American toilet, the Airhead, and we were able to get a discount, and it worked out at being about I think they're about £600 each. It doesn't use any water, it doesn't smell, it doesn't require any nasty harmful chemicals with formaldehyde in, and you end up with a valuable product at the end of it, which is adding fertility back to the land, instead of taking it somewhere where it has to be dealt with, it has to be processed, it has to be cleaned, and somewhere along the line, you know, that's all taking energy, and you know, it's just kind of not a sustainable system. It's just, no doubt about it, is actually the best decision I've made since actually getting the boat. Worst thing about it is probably emptying it, which isn't horrible, it's just not, you know, the nicest thing to do, I guess, because you are dealing with your own shit, and there is a bit of a smell at that point when you empty it, because, you know, if I empty it after 6 weeks, there's still the last week's worth of poo, and there's still, you might associate smell with a compost toilet, but if it's done properly there should be no smell. The only thing is, you go into the toilet sometimes and you get a nice smell of the sawdust, the little bucket of sawdust that sits there, which is quite a pleasant smell. If you leave the wee too long and leave it to fill up, then there can be ever such a slight smell from that, but the way around that is basically just to kind of empty that more frequently, and I generally wee into a bottle and empty that anyway, so it's only really when guests come around that they're using the actual compost loo to wee into. So yeah, there's the wee getting into the poo chamber. There's not a lot that could go wrong. I mean, I kind of have a vegetarian diet, like largely dairy free, not totally. So maybe the smell would be different for heavy meat eaters. I don't know how that would compost down differently. Maybe not. Maybe it'd be worse.